As humans, we begin to learn from the moment we are born. Many things in our environment are observed, grasped, and influenced by us. I'm sure each of you has picked up something from someone and carried it with you for the rest of your life. Today, I would like to share some of my most memorable life lessons with you which came from the most unforgettable near-death experience. It has a significant impact on my life, and the most important thing that I can do is to learn how to love. The story began with my trip to Canada on my 21st birthday, which was converted into a near-death experience of mine as a consequence of frostbite and hypothermia. My sister and I decided to go ice climbing on a high mountain. As a healthy 21-year-old adult, I had always been confident with my health status as well as my experience in practicing this kind of sport. With all of the arrogance and aggressiveness, I chose not to put on more layers of clothes regardless of the lack of equipment and my sister's advice. I never thought that the temperature in Canada could go down that much. I had only 2 instead of 3 layers, only a thick woolen sweater and a windproof parka on top. Besides, I also lacked protection for your feet and toes because there is only a pair of wool blend socks. My fashionable boots did not provide adequate insulation. Since they were not a waterproof standard one that specializes in ice climbing, they could cover my ankles. Most importantly, I forgot to bring my heavy fleece hat, which can cover my face every time I was outside on a bitterly cold day. Therefore, I had no choice but to use a face mask instead. Maybe this is the reason why it was impossible to warm the air I breathe and cannot prevent frostbite on my nose and face. I failed in keeping myself from dehydrating, which increased the risk of frostbite. Only a little more to touch the summit, I went down with frostbite, although there were many frostbite symptoms that affected me from the start of the ice climbing. At this point I couldn't bear it anymore. My skin became cold, numb and white, and there was a tingling sensation. And then, aching, throbbing and pins and needles feeling, followed by numbness invaded my body, and before I could call the name of my sister, who climbed right ahead of me, I fell into a dark space without any connection to the real world. Ferocious winds and bone-chilling cold had closed in around the mountain. I know that I may have died of hypothermia after becoming lost and exhausted, and my body lying exposed at more than 26,000 feet. Suddenly, I felt as if my soul was being sucked from the body. It was unbelievable for me to go through such a strange thing. We all know that our spirits reside within us, while our physical body encases our soul. We are an individualized God consciousness that never dies, and the soul is a part of God. Only when I pass away, my soul can transform back to spirit because it no longer has a covering called a human body. And it made me understand for sure that I died. I had already departed from my life. Then I was floating, and a massive gateway appeared, 100 yards high and 70 yards wide. God appeared in front of my eyes, as glorious and majesty as I saw him when I was alive. I spoke to God without saying anything and was given the option of passing through the gate or returning to earth.
But I made the decision to return because life was still too short to me. Nothing can be more regrettable than a death at the age of 21, especially on my birthday. In addition, I know I must come back to my family and to my beloved people. I talked so much about love and how to love as if I want to express my utmost feeling to God without any shyness.
God did listen to me and he let me make my own decision. I was forever changed as a result of that experience. I couldn't see God, but I could sense him winking at me. It is the first encounter with God, but I believe that God is still always beside me to witness how I carry out my decision. He wants to see if my decision is right or wrong. That's the only way I can put it in human terms. He had a message for me that he wanted me to know about. As I chose to come back, God helped me to come back. A mountain guide and then a doctor checked on me over the next 24 hours. Nobody had ever awoken from a hypothermic coma, particularly at such a high altitude. My sister began mourning, but then something incredible occurred. I awoke as I heard the crying sound of my sister getting louder and louder. And then, when I opened my eyes, I could see the faces of some people. I didn't know them, except my sister. She couldn't believe my awakening at first, but then burst out crying louder for happiness while embracing me tightly in her arms. After that near-death experience, I learned how to love, not only my family and my beloved people, but also all humankind and nature and the living creatures. God is present to me at all times of the day. I feel less alone, but there are times when I'm aware that my peculiar thinking and behavior make me the odd one out. I enjoy being in nature because the purity of God's Spirit pervades all things in nature, including plants, water, sky, stone, and animals. I'm most at ease out there. I often went for a long walk and prayed while doing so. I began to sense the same sense of peace, contentment, and presence that I experience when walking in the woods, and I realized it was coming from the people on the sidewalks around me. They were nature, and they radiated the same presence as a tree, a stone, or a songbird's song. I walked through the crowds for hours, as if I were in the wilderness, where God's Spirit is strongest. I also learned to pray with love. I practiced meditative prayer every day until it became so deeply embedded in my mind that it now plays as an endless loop in my subconscious. It will occasionally rise up on its own, and I will find myself in prayer without intending to do so. I've learned to pray without ceasing in this way. While I am on this planet, prayer is my only means of reconnecting with God. Prayer is both a refuge and a source of strength for me. My near-death experience compelled me to seek out a way or ways to let more light in, to make more room for God inside me, to sit as close to God as possible. It's only a blink of an eye that we call life. Heaven, on the other hand, is a vision that lasts forever. This is where we learn the lessons of self-love, universal love, compassion, forgiveness, and acceptance. We've come to do just that, to manifest every ounce of that love as our souls ascend to new heights. This is why we've come. We don't just die and go sit on a cloud somewhere playing the harp. Life is a continuous process of learning and growth.